Hello, and welcome to Leadership as a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, video review 10, Margin Call. So Margin Call is a movie that came out in 2011 about it's actually supposedly about Lehman Brothers or a couple other of those investment banks that basically almost bankrupt the country or did. Great movie. What I was trying to do when I was wrestling with this was I put this movie down all the way back in May. And then as I got closer, there's a couple other movies about the crisis that I thought I would talk about. But realistically, this is a micro level. So look at this one example. And then I'll talk about a couple of movies at the end where it's like you watch this one and then look at this next one and then look at the next one. And they basically build on top of each other. So you understand that basically the same leadership issues that existed in this movie existed at every other organization and then at every level of the government. So I didn't want to go and do one of them because they're calling out people's actual names and they all have lots of money, so they'll probably sue me for calling them out. So I'll just use the movie. I'll cheat. But what I really use this movie for is to analyze the environment that existed hypothetically in this organization, and you can see how it attributes exactly to the guy that was in charge or the leader that was in charge. So I hope you find it interesting. To me, it's one of those movies where you watch it and every character seems absolutely real. So I found it very interesting, and hopefully you will as well. So we'll get right into the PowerPoint part. So now we will get into the PowerPoint part of this presentation. So as we talked about, I'm going to do a summary of the movie. And look, it's 10 years old. If you're worried about spoilers, stop now, go watch the movie, and then come back. But I'm not going to give away a whole bunch of stuff. Remember, this is an analysis of what actually was going on leadership-wise. So, movie starts out, a bunch of people getting fired. I think it's something like 40% of the workforce nationally for this investment firm is getting fired. And there's this little pep talk where they say, hey, don't worry about those people anymore. They're gone. They stunk. So they're out of here. And then what you start to suss out a little bit as they go on is that there's a guy that is in charge of the risk management department for the whole company, and he got fired. And throughout the movie, you start to realize that he was fired because it sounds like he was telling the truth or saying that there were problems because he's in the risk management department. And the culture in the company looked down on that. And so he got fired because he was making his boss look bad. And so that's a problem, right? And so, if you're in a big company managing a whole bunch of money, it seems like you would want to have the risk management or the risk mitigation department fully staffed, or at least have competent people, which it seems like this guy was super competent, and that's why he got let go. And one of the scenes, is he's actually saying, "Hey, it seems to me that this is the last place you would want to cut, because all these cuts are happening because of financial turmoil." So, anyway, that happens. So then, as he's getting fired, he hands off an Excel spreadsheet, I assume, I don't know, a program that he's working on, where he thought that he had identified a problem, and he gives it to Zachary Quinto's character. And I say Zachary right? Anyway, Quinto gave it to his character. He decides to stay after work and start going through the thing. Turns out that he's a rocket scientist, and so he's got this huge mathematical brain and figures out the problem. Okay, so that's fine. He's brand new or new-ish, And so he calls his boss and says, we got a problem. That boss calls the next boss, says, we got a problem. Now, this is what was interesting, is that his boss, his character's boss, comes in and he starts showing him the spreadsheets that they're supposed to use to track all this stuff. And he says, I don't understand any of this stuff. He's supposed to be the boss. It seems like he should know that sort of thing. Then that guy calls in his boss. He doesn't understand the paperwork either. All they know is that there's a problem. So they make some phone calls, and then they're going to have this meeting at midnight in this building where they talk about, here's the problem and here's what we've identified. And what's I find the most fascinating about it is, 3 levels up the chain, they're saying, hey, we're not sure what these numbers mean. We need some time to go sit down and look at it. Shouldn't the people that are in charge of these sort of things understand what the numbers mean if they're making multi-billion-dollar decisions? I don't know. So then remember that for later, because we'll talk about what sort of reasons these people got promoted are, I think. This is my observation. All right. So then they call in the big boss. So the absolute top of the hill boss comes in. So he's sitting there and he says, I'm here. Tell me what the problem is. He opens up saying, it sounds like we should have fixed this problem weeks ago, but it's too late now. So why would you say something like that? If it was a week ago problem, shouldn't you have known about it? Anyway, so he basically decides, well, we have to do something drastic to get ourselves out of this situation. And then he states the executive's role, and the executive's role is, says, I'm supposed to sit here. The reason I get paid the big bucks is I'm supposed to sit here and I'm supposed to decide what the music's going to do next week, the week after that, next month, or next year. Talking about the music or the financial markets or whatever. So he says that's his whole purpose for being there. Well, that's very insightful, or it's very informative, whatever way you want to look at it, because we'll do some analysis on that and find out later on. So then he makes the decision that they're basically going to get rid of all of their debt. Now, if you go to Wikipedia and go to do some research, they talk about that this reflects a couple of things that were going on in a couple of different investment banks leading up to the financial crisis. But basically, this sounds similar to Lehman Brothers, where Lehman Brothers had, I think that they were worth $67 billion, and they had $680 billion in debt and all of these crazy financial assets. And so basically what happens is if the value of those things dropped $67 billion, you don't have any way to cover your losses, because the margin call, the whole purpose of this movie, is at the end of the day, you have to pay out your losses if you lost. And so that's the situation that existed. They had gotten themselves in such a terrible situation that they were basically in panic mode. And so they had almost gone under several times, but had just barely made it out because the market recovered enough by the end of the day to cover their losses. So then they decide they're going to sell all of it. Now, interesting enough, they call in all of the employees or all their sales team, which is 60 people. And they say, hey, here's what we got to do. We got to sell all this stuff, but you're basically going to have to lie. You're not buying anything else. So there's no trading. You're selling all of these toxic, nasty assets. And if you do, you're going to get X number of bonuses. So it's like if they reached their sales goal, they were going to get a bonus. And if the whole team did, then they got another bonus. And then they brought in the guy that they had fired from the risk management division, paid him to be quiet because they didn't want any word getting out, and then fired somebody else and kept her in there so that she could not say anything. So, what sort of crazy situation exists here, right? And then at the end of the day, once they got done doing all the sell-off and made their goals, then they fired everybody. So it's just, it's a when you watch the movie, it's painful to see. So that's sort of a summary of the movie. Like I said, I'm not giving away any spoilers. Dialogue is amazing. Everything about it's great. I really like it. It was pretty underrated when it came out. I think that it went straight to, I don't think it was ever in theaters. I think it just came out straight to video. But anyway, so that's sort of the environment that existed. So firing people for, vengeance reasons or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So now here's what I wanted to do. As I talked about a little bit during the intro, when I first saw this movie, it resonated with me. Of course, I watched it back in 2011. And then when I was making my plan for this project, I put this on there, and I did this last May. So coming up to this month, I was going, why did I put this down? I can't remember why. So I went and watched it again. Then I realized what it is. It's that the leadership environment in here is super easy to see now that we've gone through this. For all of those of you that have been through all of these videos with me, you're now going to recognize it right away. And as I said, it's well worth watching. So let's do a leadership breakdown. This is Jeremy Irons playing John Told. So John Told is big boss. So let's use, did he have the characteristics of a leader? The four essential pillars, the four essential character pillars? I don't know. I keep thinking philosophy isn't the right word now, even though that's the whole title of my project. But did he have humility? In word, yes. In deed, no. Right? So humility, at the beginning of this meeting, he says, hey, tell me what's going on. Where, they're going to finding out about the Christ. He says, tell me what's going on, but talk to me like you would a golden retriever, because I didn't get here by brains. Cool, self-deprecating, humble. But then all of the decisions that he makes after this have absolutely no humility whatsoever. It's all about self-preservation. It's all about, I've got to look good. It's all about, we're doing everything we can to save the company, forget everybody else, although that rolls into empathy. So he says the right thing, but he didn't do the right thing. This character, I'm not talking about Jeremy Irons. All right, integrity. Again, in word, yes, in deed, no. So he says, what are the three things, the three ways to get ahead in the financial business are to be first, to be the smartest, or to cheat. And he says, well, I don't cheat. Okay, great. Well, after this meeting, he has another meeting, and one of his guys that he's basically kept around forever says, look, you're willfully selling something that you know has no value. You're going to destroy the market. You're going to put companies out of business. He says, I'm selling to people for the fair market value what we would sell to anybody else. And so he starts moralizing instead of actually doing, instead of having integrity. So he's basically, we're selling all this stuff, but we're not going to tell you about what's going on because we don't want to look bad. Terrible. Okay, empathy. So no, like what we talked about, he doesn't care that he's going to destroy a bunch of people's lives. He doesn't care that they're selling things for no value. And he talks about, I need to know what the music's doing today, tomorrow, in the future, whatever. Well, that sounds like that's empathy, but it's really more of a guess, right? And then, you could say that it's partly empathy to sort of sense, you build a bunch of avatars in the future, a bunch of versions of yourself or your organization, and then sort of role play against them. That could be empathy. But then nowhere in the organization is there any empathy. Just firing people left and right. They don't care. The first thing that happens, like I said, they have a meeting after they fire everybody and says, they're gone. Don't think of them anymore. They're non-existent. When the risk management guy gets fired, somebody pokes in and says, sorry. A little while later on, that same guy's talking to somebody, hey, my dog died. He goes, sorry. There's no empathy anywhere. So That reflects the boss, right? The boss doesn't have any empathy. And then vigilance. So he said it was his job, right? The music, and I need to know what the dance is doing or the music's doing now and next week. And well, that sounds like vigilance. Cool. But then he's missing the most important part. Where's the vigilance of himself? Where's the vigilance of the organization? Where is it where he's checking in on all of these things? Like I told you, he sat down at the beginning meeting and said, this sounds like something we should have been doing weeks ago. Well, you should have known about it weeks ago. And if you were checking, you would know. Right? So no vigilance. Even though he says, like once again, says, but not doing. So he sounds correct, but he doesn't do correct when it comes to going through the 4 pillars of character. And the integrity thing really gets me because, I don't cheat. Okay, well, cool. So how are we going to get out of this? By lying. Brilliant. All right. So what does he have then if he doesn't have these 4 pillars in a good way? Because having bad versions of this led to the organization being a disaster. So does he have the talent? Absolutely. Right? Because what's he doing? How do we rate his decisions, right? So we're going to go through this. This might be a little clunky. So I'm going to put it all up together. So definition of leadership, the leadership talent, attuning competence and environmental hierarchies in pursuit of a goal. Here's the problem, though. The competence that he picked was not knowing the numbers. Remember, I told you that in the previous slide. It wasn't knowing how the financial system was working. It's not knowing how their own finances worked. It's not being an expert on being able to talk about the numbers, right? The only thing that mattered, competency, was can you make money or not, and can you stay loyal? In other words, follow the plan. Not follow the plan, but hey, these guys are gone. Okay, it's what happens here. No big deal. That was the competency. So he has a couple of people that work for him that have been around for 20, 30 years, and it's because they could make money and they were loyal. And remember, we talked about, or we haven't talked about it, but loyalty is a problem, right? You can be so loyal that you're blind to things going really wrong. So, so if you go look at it, all these people in charge are going, we don't know what's going on with the numbers. Why'd they get promoted then? So environmental. Well, what's the environment? So it's cutthroat, which, I get it. It's business, but completely cutthroat. Everybody's lying behind everybody's back. The character that was the risk management guy got fired because he had static with his boss. So she fired him. No one is listening to anybody because they say several times, you see these little things at every one of these meetings. We talked about this a little while ago. Well, somebody comes in, it's like, nope, we're off the table now. So nobody's listening when there's problems. Well, this is the environment that John Tould, that Jeremy Irons' character created in that organization. Right? And then the only time that you reported something, like great example is in one of the meetings, they say, hey, where's the risk management guy? So, oh, he got fired. And we fired the risk management guy? What? And so everybody's looking around. Well, that seems to me that would be something you wanted to report. But no, the only thing that got reported is we're going to lose money. If we're going to lose money, that goes right up the chain. All the other crap, nobody talks about. So that's the environment that his character created. That's the competence hierarchies that he created. And then in pursuit of the goal is crazy revenue, right? So if you go back and look at the financial crisis, there's all this money being made hand over fist, but it's because this was going on. And I'm sure it was going on in every institution because they all were involved in it. So that's pretty much my assumption of his character in the leadership thing. So how did the organization get to that place? Well, all he cared about was insane revenues, wanted nothing but a bunch of cutthroat people that stabbed each other in the back. And so that's what you got. Well, did that work? No. Right? Did they have leaders at every level? No. They had people that were, I'm reporting that we're going to lose money and that's going to save my career. A great example is there's one meeting where the two vice presidents, you could say, they don't say anybody's title, but you can guess it if you watch it. They're arguing and they say, and there's one guy that's been around 30 years goes, oh, I'm out. I don't want to hear this argument. And they say, no, we want you to stay. He goes, no, I don't want to be here. Why do you think I've been here this long? So he's been there that long because he doesn't know anything, keeps his mouth shut, stays loyal to the boss. And then at the end, to sort of finalize it, there's this scene where this guy goes in to quit, says, I want to get out. I went out of all this sort of stuff. And the boss says, I need you to stay. He goes, I got to stay because I need the money. Those are the people that he kept around. Not strong, independent, none of that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's the leadership profile. So if you go back and watch the movie, then you'll see here's the environment that was created. Here's all the thing. Here's what competence meant. Competence was how many people could you stab in the back? And then the goal was not anything, obviously it's good for the board. Oh, one last thing. At one point, he goes in, there's two vice presidents. He goes into one of them and says, hey, I need a head to give to the board. This is back to the empathy and humility thing. He says, I need a head to give to the board, and it's going to be you. And she says, I told you, we talked about this a year ago, and all three of us agreed this was going to be fine. He goes, yeah, don't fight me. I need to offer this up. Well, if he was worth his salt, he would say, I'm the one that made these decisions. I'm going to resign. But nope, I'm going to fire somebody else to keep himself going. So even though he says he's humble, no. Empathy, no. Integrity, no. So now, next slide. Now, this is, I mentioned it a little bit during the intro. So this is the movie over here. So it came out 2011. Well worth it. So if you watch, I recommend you watch these movies in this order because I was wrestling with making this video on how I was going to approach it. Which one of these movies two of them are movies and one of them's a documentary. But I was wondering how I was going to do this, and I realized that this is the best way to talk about it in this situation. The next one talks more about the financial crisis from people that realized it was messed up and took advantage of it. And then Inside Job shows you everybody in the government and all the politicians that were involved in profiting from and then covering up the financial crisis. Why none of these people are in jail, I don't understand. Why there weren't mass firings and everybody turned their money back in and go back to the people. No. All these people got bailed out. It's just terrible. But if you watch them in this order, then it builds on each other. So then you hear a bunch of phrases in Margin Call that make more sense in The Big Short. And in The Big Short, they explain everything really well. And then we go to the Inside Job, then they're using all of that same vocabulary, but you get to see it from the governmental thing. So what happened, right? Leadership failed at every level. Every one of the financial institutions, leadership failure. Every governmental institution, leadership failure. And you get to see that in The Big Short. They go to a couple of governing bodies and say, why aren't you telling the truth? Well, they're going to go to our competitor and we have to, nobody was out to do the right thing. Nobody was thinking about the people. And then the Inside Job just shows you that even all the way up to the president and all the people working for him, there was just corruption and cover up and people covering each other's backs and all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty sobering to go watch them. But all these movies are great. I love them because of their frankness and their detail. It's frustrating when you get done because you realize nothing happened. So hopefully this was useful. I think that the analysis of the environment and all that sort of stuff much more beneficial in the Margin Call movie, even though it's talking about money and finances. Alrighty, so thank you so much as always for your time, and I hope you have a great day.
Yeah.